I got so many questions about dry suit diving, and I'm gonna try to answer them all possibly in this live stream. And of course, if you have any other question in the meantime, just feel free to write them. I hope you have a chat. I'm not so good yet with live streams in YouTube, but I want to start by sharing my personal experience, how I got into dry suit diving and how you can do the same, of course. I actually started because I wanted to do an ice dive. And I mean, you know me, I'm diving all year round in Switzerland, especially it's really cold in winter. Like the water temperature is around 6 degrees, constant at the bottom. And I always went anyway with a semi-dry, and I found it was really fine actually. But since I wanted to do this ice dive, I thought maybe it was a good idea to try out a dry suit and see a bit if I can manage to do the dive like this. Just to be clear, you can actually do an ice dive if you are not afraid of cold, unlike me, also with a semi-dry suit, or actually if you're used to the cold, you can also go with a normal wetsuit, possibly a thick one. My sister actually, her first ice dive, she's a boss. She did it with 15 and in a semi-dry suit, and she's still alive, she's still diving. But I wanted to try directly with the dry suit. So of course I had to start a bit in advance because I didn't want to have the challenge of my very first ice dive and then also a new suit. So I started last year diving with a dry suit, and actually I liked it so much that I kept doing it all year, and now I think I didn't touch my semi-dry since several months, also in summer, because there are a lot of advantages that I'm gonna share with you later. But first, as promised, I want to tell you how you can get into dry suit diving as well. It's really easy. Actually, I never wanted to get myself a dry suit because I thought it was really expensive and I didn't think I needed one. But now that I have one, I see that it was a really good investment because I really keep using it all the time. And actually, being a dry suit diver is not so difficult. You can just try. You can also rent a suit if you prefer first, even though you will see for dry suit diving, it's really important that the suit is perfectly fitting your body, especially where we have this difference between what will remain dry and what will get wet. So for example, the neck and the wrist, they need to fit really good. If you have leaks, it's gonna be much colder than with a wetsuit. I promise, I tried it, it's not cool. So once you have a dry suit, you can also just go by yourself. You can go with somebody possibly that is able to dive properly with a dry suit, that can explain you a bit how it goes, how it works. You will see it's not much different than normal diving with a wetsuit, but you still have some stuff more that you need to consider, that you need to keep an eye on. For example, you need to, I mean, you guys know how it works with gas. If we dive deep, they compress, or when we come back, they expand. So like the buoyancy regulation will be a bit more challenging. So it's good if you go with someone that knows what they're actually doing. And if you want, and it's highly recommended actually, you can easily do in very few dives, in very few time, a dry suit certification. If you're PADI, you can do it with PADI, CMAS offers it, SSI, as you can really go, I think, everywhere and get dry suit certified, but it's not necessary. If you're a CMAS diver like I am, you actually don't even need that because it's already kind of integrated in the last certification, like in the 3 stars certification. So you can also think if you wanna do a certification for that or not. Exactly, so you can get into dry suit diving at any time, and I think if you're diving in colder waters, it's really something you should look into, even though it's a bit more expensive, but I really didn't regret it, and now that I have it, I really use it really much. Exactly, so now about the advantages. I got asked a lot of questions. What is good of dry suit diving? And of course, first thing is that it's warmer. You're not gonna be cold. you're also gonna get a different feeling. I really love to feel the water on my skin. This you don't really have, but actually it's really cool because especially the first time when you're not used, you kind of expect to jump in the water and feel the cold water on your feet, on your hands. It's not gonna happen, so it's gonna be a bit weird. But once you're down, maybe, you know, after half an hour it starts getting a bit fresh down there. You can always pump a bit of air in, or whatever gas you're using, into your suit, and you will kind of get this warm shot, because if you have this gas inside it, it keeps you a bit warm. So of course you will be warmer, but you will also be safer, depending on what kind of dives you do, of course. But if you saw my reel some time ago, I explained that actually it's like having a second BCD with you. Of course, we don't use dry suits as BCDs. We have a BCD, we use that as primary buoyancy regulations. But in case it fails or something happens, you can always use a SMB, or if you're diving dry, you can use your dry suit to kind of get up a bit enough to then make an emergency resurfacing. So this is, of course, a really big advantage for me, and the reason why even in summer I now dive mainly with a dry suit. Then, of course, what was also really an improvement for me is that I need much less weight on my weight belt. I don't have a weight belt anymore. When I was diving with a semi-dry, of course, neoprene is a bit thicker and needs a bit more weight. I'm diving with a 3-laminate dry suit. If you want to get a dry suit, I really recommend you to get 3-laminate and not neoprene, because it's much lighter, it's much compactor if you need to travel as well, and you will need much less weight. I just have my back plate and then a little weight in between my tanks, my double tanks, and that's it. So I really need much less weight, and I feel it, especially outside the water. That is an amazing advantage. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is that you are dressed. You're just dressed below. So you can also wear your undergarment, your undervest at home, and then just put your suit on right before jumping in. So you are already dressed and you will stay dressed. So if it's cold outside, because maybe it's winter, it's snowing, you just take off the suit and you have really warm undergarments already on you. You don't need to pass from the getting naked, wet, drying yourself, and then freezingly putting on some clothes. So like this part is completely skipped. You are dressed and you remain like this for the whole time. So I think this is also a pretty cool advantage of dry suit diving. But of course, there are not just advantages, there are also some challenges. And I'm gonna tell you some of the mistakes I did myself when starting with dry suit diving, so that hopefully you will do better. First of all, one thing you will notice is that it's warm. Yes, it's warm down, but it's also warm, much warmer outside the water. So especially if in summer, for example in Switzerland, outside is really warm, but below water is still like the temperature is really pretty cold. So you're gonna sweat outside and then be wet underwater. And this is the worst. So you need to try somehow not to sweat, because if you sweat and you're all wet, then being down with the dry suit wet is much worse than being wet in a wetsuit, because neoprene will create this layer of water around your skin that will warm up with your body and then stay warm, keep you warm. This doesn't exist in dry suits anymore. So if you have a leak, or if you're sweaty, or whatever kind of liquid you have on you, you're gonna feel it. So a challenge is managing to getting dressed really fast without sweating and then jumping in the water. But of course, if you manage to stay dry as much as possible, then you will definitely feel a difference. I said in the beginning that it's really important to have a dry suit that fits you perfectly, and I had problems with my dry suit. It was measured and everything, and it was the smallest size that Butter was producing, but still it leaked in my neck the whole time, and I was basically completely wet, and I was freezing already after half an hour, not even, I was freezing. I had to go out because I was completely wet. As I said, being wet with a dry suit is much worse than just diving with a normal neoprene suit, a wetsuit. So it's really important that you properly adjust it and then try, and if you see that you have leaks somewhere, you just bring it directly to adjust it. So yeah, so you avoid doing what I did. Probably my mistake was that I wanted to try out neoprene neck because I heard that it squeezes much less, and it's actually much easier to take off if you have longer hair like I do. You don't rip them off completely like with latex, for example, or silicone. But it was much harder for the neoprene neck to be really fitting on my neck. So if you have a really tiny neck like I do, I would suggest you to go with latex or silicone, which is a bit more delicate, like it can break much easier, but it squeezes also a bit less, because with neoprene you really risk that you don't manage to fit it, because either it was tight enough but I couldn't put it on because I still have a normal sized head, I guess, so I couldn't put it on, or I could put it on but then it wasn't it was letting water in, so it was a bit useless. So check which material you want for your neck. I think your dive shop, your local dive shop, will most probably give you the best suggestion what to do, also regarding your physiognomy and everything. So ask what's best for you and don't make experiments like I did. Then of course, a problem or a question that I got asked a lot is, how do I pee with a dry suit? Because in a wetsuit we all know how it goes, but with a dry suit you cannot do this anymore. So actually it's not a problem. There are two teams, I think, in the dry suit diving world. One is for a pee valve or a sheepy, and one is for diapers. I personally at the moment prefer to use diapers. I think they're just easier to deal with, especially for the beginning. So I just wear my diapers and it's not a problem anymore if you're diving for a long time, even if you're dry, because you remain dry, hopefully. Exactly. Then of course a challenge was learning to regulate buoyancy. I've been diving since years and you know that, but still my buoyancy sucks. And now with the dry suit, it's an additional challenge, of course. So you're gonna need some time to figure out how much air you can actually put in your suit and how much you will still need to put in your BCD, because the dry suit empties much slower. So when you resurface, you cannot have used your dry suit as a BCD because you won't manage to take out all this air you put in so fast. So you can really not use a dry suit as a standard BCD, and you need a bit to find a good compromise between staying warm, not being squeezed too much, because of course the gas compresses, so you don't want to be squeezed, but not being floating inside your suit. And for regulating this, you have a valve that you can press like on your chest, and this injects air from your tank, for example. And then you have valves like on the side here that you can open or close, and that are allowing air to leave again. If it's too big, it will automatically irrigate some air out. Now, my mistake was one of the first time I was diving with a dry suit, I forgot to open it. So it remained closed, and I didn't realize, of course, when I was going down. So I went down, I put some air inside, everything good. And then, of course, by coming up again, this gas took a bigger volume. And yeah, with the time I was looking like, yeah, a balloon, and then it was kind of a bit too late. Luckily my body was good enough to manage this, help me down while I was waiting for this air to leave. So this is of course actually dangerous if you're with someone that doesn't realize this. I was on one of my first Drysuit dives. Mistakes happen, of course. I learned my lesson, but I'm really thankful that I had a dive buddy that was diving Drysuit as well and knew exactly how to deal with this situation. So always remember, please, before you go down, you do your body check, you check everything. Don't forget to check that your valve is open. Please, don't do my same mistakes. Exactly. Then I got some questions about Drysuit maintenance. I'm not exactly sure what you guys wanted to hear, but I'm gonna tell you how I do it. And I think it's a pretty good spa day for my Drysuit every time. If you're diving in salt water, of course, you need to rinse it at the end. And it's important that when you do that, you close the zip. You will have 2 zips here in the front. Close them and rinse with fresh water so that there is no salt remains on the suit itself. I dive mainly fresh water, so this step I can skip most of the time. But what is really important is that if you have latex parts, like for example the wrist, or if you would choose to have a latex neck, you need to put talc on it so that it, first of all, is much easier to put on afterwards. So if you're struggling to put them, just put some talc on and it will get 100 times easier. And it will preserve the rubber, the latex, so it will preserve better over time. Second thing you need to pay attention to is the zip, especially the internal one. You need to put fat. There is a special fat that looks, yeah, like a lipstick sort of, that you can just put on the zip. Then you open it and close it to spread it really good everywhere, and this ensures that it stays waterproof, so that over time you won't get leaks through this internal zip. So always put some fat on the zip, always put some talc on the wrists or the neck, and you're good to go. I usually keep my Drysuit, like every other suit, away from sunlight and in a closed space so that I don't have dust or stuff like this. And I think it's good enough, so you don't need to do much, and it's nothing special. It's just like a normal suit. It will only keep you a bit warmer and a bit drier over time. Good. I hope I answered probably not all, but most of the questions that you asked. And if you still have questions, I'm really happy to read them here in the comment. And I am not sure. There is a question that I just learned diving and did my open water, and what courses can I recommend? Honestly, depends what you want to do. You can go on, you can do the diver certification, but if you like to dive with mixtures or stuff, you can also do one of the special gas mixtures certification, dependent on where you do that, with PADI or CMAS or whatever. You will have different standards, different requirements. So one certification that I think is really good to have is the nitrox, because it allows you to do less deco. Of course, you cannot go as deep as with air, you will learn this, but I mainly dive with nitrox and I really think it's comfy. So this could be a good certification if you're looking into something different. I'm really happy that you guys appreciated the informations. And no, you cannot go by yourself. Sorry, it's getting dry here in autumn. I would never recommend to go by yourself. Oh my god, I'm dying. In diving in general, it's always good to have a dive buddy. But also for Drysuit diving, I would recommend you go with a buddy, and especially if you're learning, that knows a bit what to do and how to overcome problems. Yeah, so I would definitely never go alone, especially if you're learning. Do you prefer neoprene Drysuit or 3-laminate Drysuit? Well, I personally prefer 3 laminate because it's easier to carry around, it's much lighter, and you need much less weight when you dive. And I feel it's much comfier to have on. You're not so baggy and so thick. It's just like having a jacket on. So I really prefer 3 laminate. Good, I hope I replied to every comment. Thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna try to turn this off now. Not sure how this works, but thank you so much for joining in. I wish you all a great weekend and make some beautiful bubbles. Bye bye!